Content warning. This video is not made for kids. It contains fictional depictions of mental illness, fictional violence, and fictional abuse. The fictional characters in this story are heavily afflicted by the things that I have spelled out to you, and some of the inner monologue seems to suggest that they should be getting hurt like this, but that is absolutely not the case. Me portraying this ABUSE, or mental illness, is meant to show the audience how the illness, or ABUSE, feels inside of the mind of the afflicted person, so they can sympathize and maybe stop themselves from following a similar pattern in the future. Be careful if you are easily triggered. You're most likely about to enter the mind of someone who is heavily afflicted by illness and ABUSE. Viewer discretion is advised. Gregory lingered at the front driveway of his house a little while longer than he really should have. Even though he knew what he was going to say, he didn't know how he would actually get to the right place. There was no way that he could remember which direction the police station was, and even if he did know, it was dangerous for him to walk alone out here. But he was desperate. So Gregory searched in the garage and found a spare package of pepper spray that his mom always had a stock of. That made him feel a little better, but what really gave him the opportunity to commit was when he saw a jogger passing through. It was a woman with a drooping ponytail, her deterrence coming in the form of a black and white border collie who was leading the way. She wasn't actually going down this street, she was crossing the road at an intersection far down at the end of the block, giving him only a few seconds to decide. Gregory felt better talking to a woman with a dog than a guy with a white van, so he broke out into a sprint down the sidewalk, his heart racing even faster than his legs. He was fully aware that the moment his surroundings noticed him, he could be the perfect target for all sorts of horrible things, so he did his best to catch up with her before anything could happen. Gregory slowed once he got closer, trying to ignore the stinging in his foot. He made a small and friendly, "Hi there," so the dog would notice him. When the border collie turned to look, it didn't start barking or growling, which was a good sign at least. Instead, it slowed its step, tilting its head with its big pink tongue flopping out of its mouth. The moment the woman noticed that disturbance, she whirled around, her hand on her pocket. But when she saw that it was just a kid, her fear relaxed into confusion. She stopped, still breathing heavily from her exercise, taking a quick look around as the border collie padded up to him. Gregory kept still, holding out one of his hands so the dog could sniff him. Based on first impressions, the border collie was friendly, its white-tipped tail twirling around as it licked his fingers. "Oh, hello there," the woman said once she pulled her headphones out. "Are you okay, little guy? Where's your parents?" As expected, the woman's eyes zipped up to the stitches on his head, her face lighting up with recognition. "Wait, you're the boy that, George, right?" "Gregory," he corrected. "Gregory, yeah," she agreed, leaning down with a nervous laugh. "Sorry, I'm not good with remembering names. Are you all right, Gregory? Where's your mother?" "I kind of got lost," Gregory replied. "Do you know where the police station is?" "Oh, yeah." She pointed in the direction that she had been running. "Yeah, it's somewhere over there. I bet I can loop around to pass it by. Do you want to walk with me?" Gregory was keeping his hands to himself, but he was looking over the border collie intently. It appeared to be clean and very nicely groomed, its thick fur spotless and eyes happy. He decided that if the dog looked this well cared for, she was probably trustworthy enough to at least walk with him on the way to the station. This was definitely the best deal that he was going to get. "Yeah, thank you, ma'am," Gregory agreed. And so they were off. The woman turned her jog into a brisk walk so that he could keep up, the three of them steadily making their way towards the station block after block. Eventually, after several corners and crosswalks, he recognized the obsidian-colored sheen of the station's black windows. Gregory thanked the lady as she turned onto her usual route, crossing the street and weaving his way through the parking lot, mindful of his surroundings. Crows skittered around a handful of cars, the early morning sun blocked by the pointed roof of the station. With the entrance in view, Gregory found himself coming to a stop. He put a hand on a concrete support beam, his apprehension pinning him there. What if the police put him in jail for sneaking out of the house like this? Then again, the things that he was going to tell them were very important. Even if he did get in trouble for this, Gregory would happily go to jail for Freddy's sake. When he made it to the entrance, he of course found it to be locked. Gregory cupped his hands around his eyes to peer through the glass, catching a vague glimpse of a silhouette behind a desk. He decided to just start knocking. The person's head bobbed up, staring for a few seconds in obvious confusion. She went back to her work, so Gregory continued to knock, hoping that she would look close enough to see who he was. After a few tries, the woman stood up, squinting at him, a flicker of recognition flashing over her face. After a quick glance around, she walked over and opened the door, seeming quite amused by the unexpected visit. "Is that you, Gregory? What are you doing here? Where's your mother?" "I need to tell you guys something super important," Gregory said quickly. "I saw the stuff on the news, and I think Miller also lied to you guys about what happened on the 28th. As he expected, that was enough to spark her interest. She opened the door the rest of the way, the air conditioning rolling over him like mist, turning the sweat on his back into ice water. "Where's your mother?" she asked as she made her way back to her desk. "She's asleep," Gregory said simply. "How did you get here?" "I walked with a lady and her dog. She looked nice, so I thought that it would be okay." The lady gave him a weird look. "Does your mother know you're here?" She said it in a way that made Gregory nervous that he was about to get in trouble. "No." The lady took on a scolding tone. "Gregory, you know it's wrong to sneak out on your own, right? Your mother could be very worried about you." Gregory tried to move on from that. I'm sorry. I'll go to jail if you want me to. Can I just start telling you guys the stuff that I know? I'm like 80% sure that Miller probably edited the footage that he gave you." "Well, yes, you can give us a witness testimony, and we'll get to that if that's what you really want," she said, picking up the phone on her desk. "We just need to get your mother here for parental consent, and so she knows that you're okay." Gregory's heart dropped at that, but he just nodded and waited in the space behind her desk as she began to talk to someone on the other end of the line. If he knew that they would make his mom come here anyway, he might have just taken her in the first place. But then again, at least it wasn't him that was going to wake her up. At least not directly. The scene slowly began to assemble itself, the lady at the desk talking to someone else on the phone right after the call to his mother. Gregory wasn't sure exactly how this would work. The police hadn't done this when he had first escaped from the Pizzaplex because they thought that they already had all of the witness statements that they would ever need from the animatronics recordings. But looking back on the weird bullet points that the policemen gave him, Gregory was pretty sure that even they hadn't been told the full story. Whatever Miller had cut out, Gregory was about to discover by process of elimination. He recognized the rough puttering of his mom's old car as it pulled into a parking space alongside the various patrol vehicles, the sight of her crawling out of the driver's seat making him shrink down in shame. She would not be happy about this. As she pushed her way through the glass doors, the effects of last night's drinking made themselves clear to him. She was wearing a pair of thick sunglasses, her movements a bit unsteady, already wearing a sour frown that clearly spelled out to him how much she didn't want to be here. But, of course, other people were around, so his mom didn't say anything to Gregory. Instead, she just walked up to the desk, talking to the other grown-ups to confirm who she was. And then, hardly 2 minutes later, another policeman's car pulled in at the front, the figure inside making his way through the entrance. It was Ivan, his shiny bald head unmistakable. Him again? Why was that guy everywhere? He wasn't the chief, but through all of this, Gregory had seen more of Ivan than whoever was actually in charge. This was the part where things made less sense to Gregory. The grown-ups were signing a few papers and talking to each other about consent forms while he just stared awkwardly at the floor and waited for things to get a move on. When they were finally done with whatever they were doing, his mother grabbed his arm and started tugging him along behind her as they weaved their way further into the building. Her grip was several times too tight, forcing Gregory to keep up if he didn't want the pressure to increase. Ivan tailed them the entire way, stopping them at a particular door and unlocking it with a jangling ring of keys. As they stepped inside the new room, Gregory was struck by how welcoming it appeared. There were several potted plants set in the corner, their glossy, dark green leaves bending towards the curtains of the window, which were glowing with the warmth of the new daylight. There was a simple embroidered couch across from a similarly designed chair, a dark coffee table planted in the middle with a pencil holder filled to the brim with dark blue pens. He had been imagining blank white walls and a metal chair, but maybe that wasn't the type of interaction this was going to be. Maybe this is the room that they used for little kids or people that weren't in trouble. The door clicked shut behind them as Gregory and his mother settled on the sofa, Ivan sitting down on the chair opposite to them. Ivan fidgeted with the creases in his cyan button-up shirt, setting a clipboard down in front of him and picking up one of the pens out of the pencil holder. Gregory wondered if Ivan was the head of whatever relationship Fazbear Entertainment had with the police. It seemed likely, judging by how many times he had taken the lead in stuff like this. Ivan reached to a small box set beside the pencil holder, pressing a button which lit up to confirm that it was on. "This device is going to record what we discussed today," Ivan explained, leaning back and pulling the clipboard into his lap. "Okay, this is just for the record, but my name is Ivan Hudson, and what are your names?" "Gregory Cooper and Ruth Cooper," his mother replied, immediately clearing her throat afterwards. Her voice still sounded dry and scratchy. "It is July 7th of 2087, Ivan said to the recorder, "and before we start, I believe that I need to read you your rights." What? For what?" Well, from what I heard, you wanted to make some sort of witness statement about the, situation we've been dealing with as of late," Ivan replied. "Just to keep you safe, we always have to read you your rights, even for small things like this." Gregory wasn't sure what small things like this actually meant, but he decided to drop it and just listen. Ivan went on a long-winded explanation all about his rights as a witness, giving a voluntary statement, making sure that Gregory understood what each of the points meant. It was very boring and only made Gregory feel more impatient, but Ivan insisted that it was important. When that whole mess was over, Ivan finally got down to business. "Okay, so, Gregory, what are you here to talk to us about?" Both Ivan and his mother were waiting for Gregory to respond. He knew that, behind the sunglasses, his mom must be restraining the urge to grab Gregory's hair and slam his face into the coffee table for waking her up this early. I saw all the stuff on the news about the Pizzaplex," Gregory began. I was seeing all sorts of stuff about how they're being hurt in there, and I was thinking back to the stuff that you guys told me to say to the news people, and I'm kinda starting to think that Miller lied to you guys." That statement floated in the air for a bit. What do you mean by that?" "I might be wrong," Gregory said, swinging his feet nervously, "but since you guys didn't react to some of the stuff that I saw about the animatronics' working conditions, I think Jeremy might have cut some parts out. I want to tell you the entire story, so you know what actually happened in there." "Okay, that's fine," Ivan said, his tone switching to something overly smooth and kind, something that made it clear that he didn't believe Gregory just yet. "You can tell us all that you know. You don't have to feel embarrassed." Gregory slowly began to rewind through that night, the disturbing images flickering at the corners of his vision. His mother reached over and placed a hand on his back. To anybody else, it might seem that she was trying to comfort him, but Gregory knew fully well that she was reminding him of the parts at the beginning of the story that he was supposed to change. Gregory decided that this wasn't about him, and he should just keep his mother's edits to how he got into the Pizzaplex. "Okay, so when I went into the Pizzaplex to follow James, I climbed inside of Freddy's writing compartment to hide from Vanessa. You already know that Freddy didn't actually bite me. I took out his chip, I tried to escape with him, the doors closed, and then I slid down into the daycare. That's all normal, right?" "Yes, that's normal. But do you guys have the parts from inside the daycare?" Ivan paused, then shook his head. No, it turns out that the daycare attendant's storage was already full at that point. The cameras stopped recording many weeks before when their storage was maxed out." "Okay, so that's why I didn't see anything about that part," Gregory mumbled. "Did the Miller guy even mention why the storage was like that for that long?" He shook his head. "No, not that I know of." "Well, when the daycare closed, they completely abandoned Sun and Moon in there. I was apparently the first person they had seen in a whole month. Sun was acting really weird. He was all twitchy and talking about hallucinations of spiders or something, and It turns out it was because he hadn't slept in... I think he said he hadn't slept in 29 days? Miller, or his manager, or whoever was in charge of that decision, basically just told him to keep Moon on the inside forever and wait for further instructions, and they just dumped him back in the daycare and let him drive himself crazy with sleep deprivation. The relaxed, almost condescending smile that Ivan had given him before died out. So then, Gregory had been intending to move on to Chica, but instead his heart began to frantically pound against his ribcage like it was trying to escape from his chest. The clicking of Moon's hooks, the slithering of his wires. Gregory held his breath, the healing cuts on his foot prickling like they were filled with sticker burrs. Come on, this wasn't about him and his feelings. He had to keep going for Freddy. Okay, so once I got away from Moon, Freddy bandaged up my foot and we saw Vanessa for the first time, and then it was time to go to Chica's place. Were you given the recordings in Chica's perspective? No, unfortunately, Ivan admitted, but that wasn't effective the chip that Vanessa gave her. It automatically stopped recording when Chica began to hunt you down to cover Vanessa's tracks. We only had the recording from Freddy outside of the kitchen. Gregory's guts sank as he realized he would have to go over that part in detail. The pizza returned to his nostrils once again, the sickly mixture of mold and garbage making his stomach turn. He forced himself to take in new breaths, trying to show his nose that he wasn't back there. The stuff that Chica was saying, it was really scary, Gregory said, the sound of Chica chewing on garbage pressing up behind his eardrums. I mean, she was trying to kill me and everything, but when she wasn't going after me, she was just crying and eating from the trash. She said a few times that she was hungry, and I mean, I didn't really think about it at the time, but I really have no idea why she would choose to eat from the garbage if she can taste. I'm worried that they stopped feeding her or something, if she's having to eat garbage. By now, Ivan was fully attentive, the wrinkles of his brow becoming more prominent. Okay, so I trapped her in the trash compactor, I knocked her out, went back to Freddy. Did you see the conversation between Freddy and Moon? Yes, we did see that. Okay, Vanessa was in her suit for the rest of the night after that, and, let me guess, the chip stopped recording when Roxy went after me? Yes. Gregory tried not to look too disappointed. Even though his legs itched with the need to run, he just tried to barrel his way through the explanation. Okay, well, Roxy needs therapy or something. She is the most insecure person I've ever met. I was only able to shoot her in the eyes because I figured out her secret and teased her until she lost her cool and charged. Her secret, it was... This was another one of those moments where he only realized how messed up it was once he wasn't running for his life. She apparently stole eyes from a staff bot so that she could see through the maze's walls and cheat in matches, which means at some point she ripped out her own eyes and put new ones in without being numbed, all to win laser tag matches. I don't know what drove her to do that, but whatever it was, it should be checked out. He waited for Ivan to interrupt or say something else. Ivan kept his mouth shut, but Gregory could tell he, too, was disturbed. After the laser tag arena, Vanessa caught me. Gregory tried to keep going, but the throbbing of his heart grew worse as adrenaline involuntarily rushed through him. He tried to get away from the feeling of Vanessa's metal hand on his wrist, the smell of the stranger's clothes all packing into his nostrils as one musty cloud left all alone in the dark. She locked me in Lost and Found, probably because she had no idea where Freddy was and didn't want him to run into her kidnapping me and beat the crap out of her. When she left to go find Freddy first and sucker punch him or something, Freddy found me and broke me out. You probably saw that part. And then it was time for Monty. Gregory stopped again, feeling a little ridiculous. Why was he so bothered by this recounting of the story? He already knew that he survived the experience. Then why was he so terrified? Do it for Freddy. He had to keep talking for Freddy. Monty's chip was malfunctioning, Gregory said. Did you guys get to see Monty's part? Bits and pieces. So he dragged me down into his, I don't know, his secret hideout, the part beneath the water? I don't know what it was called. But he didn't attack me. He said that it was painful, but he was able to resist the chip long enough for me to pull it out. Once I got it out, I learned a bit more about Monty. Apparently, he's really sad about the others not liking him. He thought that they hated him so much that he didn't even want to go back to the surface with me. Oh, wait. Ivan halted the story. No, that didn't... He thought for a few more seconds, then said, There wasn't a conversation. You pulled it out, and the two of you went back up. There! That's what I was thinking Miller did. Gregory nearly shot to his feet. Did he just cut to Monty taking me back to the surface? No conversation at all? No, none. Well, Monty isn't doing as good as the Miller guy wants you to think he is, Gregory said, a strange protective flare overcoming him. Monty feels like he doesn't fit in. He's so stressed out about being around the others. He thought they would blow up in his face if they even looked at him. Gregory waited as Ivan jotted down a few notes. But his heart, it was still slamming itself into his ribs. Every time that he took a breath, it felt like his lungs were pressing against vital arteries, his goosebumps quickly becoming soaked in excessive sweat. Every time that he blinked, he could see one of their glowing eyes in the darkness. Moon's razor-tipped wires sliding against each other, the rot spilling from Chica's beak, Roxy's snapping fangs, Monty's reptilian back hiding just beneath the dark surface of the water. No, come on, he wasn't back there anymore. He survived. He was fine. Freddy needed him to be strong. Did you at least see the part where Freddy had to fight the others to keep them off of me? Yes, we did see that, Ivan replied. Freddy's recording of that was intact. Did you see the part in the auditorium? Ivan repeated back to him. Yes, they had to play a song to open parts and services, and all the noise woke DJ up, and he chased you through the tunnels, broke the tunnels, Moon got knocked out when he fell. Gregory was about to move on, but a tiny detail caught onto him like a fishing hook. Did you say that the noise woke DJ up? Well, yes, obviously. How long do you think it took for DJ to wake up? Gregory asked slowly. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds. The song was pretty loud. Gregory slowly began to put the pieces together, and though he didn't fully understand why, it was confusing enough to set off alarm bells. No, we went through the entire song, Gregory said. He only woke up after Moon pulled me out of his hand. Really? How did he not wake up? DJ is deaf. Again, Ivan seemed stunned, his mouth soundlessly folding around unfinished sentences until he finally managed to say, No, he's not. What are you talking about? He's deaf, Gregory insisted. Did you guys not even notice? He wasn't deaf when he was made, Ivan said. Are you sure that he's gone deaf since then? Yes, of course, Gregory nodded with a tinge of irritation. Look, I don't know what made him deaf, but he's definitely deaf right now. It's probably best for you to double-check how that even happened and why it's not fixed yet. Okay, we'll look into that, yeah. Do I keep going? Yes, keep going, Ivan said, marking something on the clipboard and underlining it several times. We got to parts and services. Even though Gregory was trying to keep his mind focused on the objective facts of the situation, he couldn't stop the shiver that racked his body. Something had happened in there. Gregory kept telling himself that it had to just be the horrors of hiding in the scrap pit, but that just didn't seem right. The color purple and red. Freddy holding him, telling him not to look. Something sticky on his fingers. Gregory focused on the content of the manual, swallowing down the lump in his throat. I saw something really bad in the manual. For each of the procedures, there was this first step where... Gregory's voice shook as he cleared his throat, trying to gather his thoughts. He knew the implications of what he had seen, but he just couldn't believe that things like that had actually happened down there, that Freddy and his family had gone through something like that for who knows how long. Before each procedure, they're supposed to paralyze the animatronics with the switch on the back of their head. The switch numbs them so all the cutting and breaking and stuff doesn't hurt. But the manual was telling the technicians that if the paralyzing switch is damaged, they're just supposed to tie the animatronics down and do the procedure anyway, without numbing the pain. Saying it aloud only made the scenario more real inside of his head. He fought against a surge of nausea, fixing his eyes on the floor beneath his feet. He didn't even want to think about what they might have been doing down there to Freddy and his family. Sorry, they're what? Gregory's head snapped back up. Ivan's eyes were wide within his pale face. They're allowed to operate on them without... Gregory nodded. Ivan's reaction only confirmed what Gregory had been worried about. He tried to keep his composure, now grimly reminded of exactly why he had come here in the first place. He had to do this for them. Yeah. So they had to hide in the scrap pit once Vanessa came. I'm pretty sure that she was doing something with Bonnie, but we didn't know that Bonnie was there at the time. Did Miller cut the sound of them crying after they got out of the pit? Ivan sighed deeply, rubbing a hand down his face. It was enough for Gregory to know that he had been correct. It was every time that they showed emotion. That consistency kept repeating in his head, the nature of the edits beginning to come into the light. This next part, I'm going to assume that Miller also cut the part where they started arguing with each other. Gregory kept going, not needing to stop to know that he was right. Look, I'm not like a therapist or anything, but their family is really messed up. I don't remember what exactly set it off, but Moon was saying something about how stressed he is about his job. He kept on saying that the kids would pull his arm off for fun. There were too many of them for him to keep up with. It was bad. Then Roxy and Monty started arguing with each other, and Chica was getting really upset, and Freddy had to yell at them to get them to stop. I know it was something about Bonnie being scrapped. They're just so scared of the same thing happening to them, too. Gregory exhaled, blinking up at the light on the ceiling. I didn't see much of the next part, he said, but their plan was to just split up and look for her all over the mall, since the whole place was so big that it would take forever for them to travel together. But Freddy told me to stay with Moon and hide, so everyone else split up and we hid in the theater area. Recalling their conversation made Gregory's heart ache, knowing how it all ended. Moon is really close to Vanessa, or was really close to Vanessa. He was telling me about how he was basically her dad. He had known her since she was littler than me, and he just couldn't believe that Vanessa would do something like this. I mean, I could believe it, but I didn't know her at all. Moon insisted that he knew Vanessa. He said that this had to be some sort of mistake, that she would never do this. But then DJ found us and told us that Vanessa had already caught all the others. Gregory met Ivan's gaze, asking him, how did Vanessa catch them all on her own? They didn't have the chip. Nothing should have been blocked out, right? Ivan thought long and hard about that. What we saw through their eyes was them just walking around, and then out of nowhere, Vanessa knocked them out. I mean, I wouldn't have considered it before, but based on all the stuff you're telling me now, I don't think Vanessa just snuck up behind them and hit them on the head. You're right. We should try and get a hold of those original recordings. There's no way she managed to take them down that fast. It was quite liberating to hear an adult taking his opinion so seriously. It almost made him forget the presence of his mother entirely. So he kept going, determined to finish the story. Me and Moon went to go save them. I know you told me to tell people that they looked for her in the tunnels, but do I just say what actually happened? Yes, just say what actually happened. Ivan waved him forward. I know about all the stuff in the underground replica. Well, we saw Freddy and his family hanging from a magnet over a huge scrap dump, and Gregory's voice shook. Vanessa had ordered some of the broken staff bots from the dump to guard them and make sure they don't go anywhere, and... breathing on his neck. Gregory snapped his head around, shooting to his feet. His heartbeat tried to drill its way out of his chest as he confirmed that nothing was actually there. Are you all right? Ivan asked. Gregory forced himself to sit back down, his mother giving him a look that he didn't like. Yeah, I thought. He stumbled over the beginning of that sentence, then tried to reform it again. I thought there was a bee. He tried to plow forwards with the rest of the story, deciding to skip over the parts that Miller had been physically incapable of cutting out without big holes in the story. We got them down, and we went into the storage room, and... His voice failed once more. He sat there in silence, the sound of the air conditioning growing like static in his ears. He wanted to take in a breath, to open his mouth, to do anything, but the silence stretched on and on, thickening the air until it felt like he was submerged deep in the ocean. Are you all right? Do you need to take a minute? Ivan asked, breaking the strained pause. No, I'm fine. His eyes shot up to his mother, then snapped back down to the coffee table. He was being stupid and rude and bad. Ivan would be mad to hear him crying. Don't cry. This isn't about you. Stop crying. You're supposed to be helping Freddy. He choked back the tears, only daring to breathe again when he was certain that he wouldn't break down. We saw James. You know this part. Bonnie appeared. Vanessa appeared. Moon went after Vanessa. We were left with Bonnie. He almost killed me. So many times. His mind was already working ahead on the next part of the story, already knowing the trend that the edits had been repeating. Did you see the animatronics talking to each other during that fight? No, actually. I always thought it was a little weird that they didn't say anything to him. Did they actually speak to Bonnie? Gregory nodded. Yeah, they said a lot. The sound of Bonnie's family screaming for him to stop trickled through his ears. They didn't want to hurt him. They wanted to save him. They held him down. I reached into his mouth. It was like he was back there all over again. The stench of wet pennies permeated the lining of his nostrils, hot breath washing over his hair, Bonnie's rusted teeth digging into his scalp as he shoved his hand deeper into his hideous maw. He still remembered what he had been thinking right after Bonnie bit him. He wasn't really sure what he believed in. People argued about religion a lot, but Gregory had never been raised within a singular idea. So it was such an odd experience to feel everything go black and fully accept the fact that this was it, that he was now dead, that he was about to discover what happened to a person when they pass away. He remembered wondering if he would see James, if he would see God, or if he would just see nothing at all. Gregory, do you hear me? Gregory snapped back into focus, only just realizing that he had been silent for far too long. He lowered his hand from the stitches lining his head, picking at his fingernails instead. Yeah, that happened, Gregory continued, not really knowing how else to move past that existential crisis. But Bonnie was really confused because of the effect that chip had on him. It sounded like he was still being tricked by Vanessa, so at first he tried to defend Vanessa from the others. The things that Bonnie said. The snarling, the cries, the broken look on Bonnie's face as he realized what he had been doing for the last several days. It was blocking up Gregory's thoughts, as clear to him as it had been on that night. He still felt angry. He felt terrible for feeling angry at Bonnie, but he just couldn't stop himself. It's not his fault, Gregory thought. Vanessa made him do it. After all that Bonnie went through, it wouldn't be fair to blame him for what happened to James. Do you know what Miller did to Bonnie? Gregory asked. Ivan frowned deeply, seeming to know where this was going. We didn't allow him to kill Bonnie. He still had to be fed through the charger down there and everything. Miller said that Bonnie was in perfect condition, just out of the public eye. Miller cut the part where Bonnie had a breakdown, didn't he? Ivan nodded, almost ashamed. It was difficult for Gregory to bring it to words, but this was probably the most important thing out of this entire interview. He told us that Miller lied to him. Miller said that he was going to fix his insomnia, but instead, the technicians paralyzed him with a switch and threw him into the scrap dump. He was kept alive, but from what he said, it was hell. The animatronics, they're still conscious when they're paralyzed. He was fully aware of what was going on around him. He saw everything. He couldn't move. He couldn't fight back or cry or call for help at all. He said that the staff bots down there pulled him apart and his body just wouldn't move no matter how much he wanted to get out of there. Nobody ever came down to check on him. They just left him there. He was paralyzed in the dump for 5 years, and the only reason it didn't go on for longer was that Vanessa dragged him out and put him back together so she could use him for her own plans. Gregory rubbed his eyes, trying to stop them from leaking. The whole time, the rest of Bonnie's family thought that he was dead. They were told that if they didn't perform well enough, they would be scrapped too. There was still so much more to say, but recounting Bonnie's story had nearly drained him of all of his life. Gregory was surprised to see that Ivan had a genuine look of horror written on his face. It was so odd to see an adult care that much. When Gregory was ready, he reached the last part. So, Bonnie joined our side after the others told him that Vanessa was tricking him. We went after Vanessa. I stayed in Freddy to direct him around. They got picked off. Vanessa shut the power off. Freddy got knocked out. Before she grabbed me, I used the fire extinguisher to force her to take the suit's head off so the animatronics could see her, but then she took me hostage. She threatened to kill me to make Moon let her go, and she just went off the rails. I don't even remember what they said to set her off, but she just started screaming at them about all sorts of stuff that I don't understand. Screaming? Great. Did he cut that part too? Again, Ivan sighed heavily, and Gregory took it as a signal that not even that moment had been spared from Miller's edits. Moon managed to climb up the stairs before they retracted to come and save me. Once he got me away from Vanessa, he ran after her. The impact. It resonated through his skull, bringing him back to the cold, dark cave where Vanessa made her final mistake. They fought. She fell. Moon tried to grab her, but it didn't matter. His arm fell off. A horrible thud, the sickening crunch of every bone in her body shattering at once, the squelching, popping noises as Moon tried to resuscitate her. Moon was completely devastated, and if Miller didn't even allow Vanessa's rant to make it in, I'm betting that he cut that part out too. Ivan nodded sullenly, and Gregory did his best to speed to the end, just wanting to come out the other side already. Freddie convinced Moon to let her go, and we pulled her back up to the surface. Monty carried James to the exit, and then the managers found us. When it was finally over, Gregory focused on keeping each shaky breath slow and deep. Reliving that horrible night again was just as bad as the first few times when the reporters had squeezed out all of the tiny personal details that he never wanted to share with millions of strangers. But at least this time he was telling the real thing, telling them something that would help Freddie and his family out of this. Ivan didn't speak for a while, staring down at his notes, the light of the recording device continuing to blink intermittently. "Thank you for telling us this," Ivan told him, tilting his head so he could meet Gregory's eye. "We were suspecting a few things had been trimmed down, but if Miller really censored all of that..." "Please, you have to help them," Gregory said, the words trembling as they crawled up out of his throat. "I know that they're robots, but they are alive. They can feel things. They cared about me so much they turned on Vanessa and stopped her, no matter how close they had been to her. Honestly, I wish that I could go back to Freddie and live with him instead." Hearing that last part sneak out of his own mouth was like being shot with a bullet. His body locked up as if he had been thrown into a freezing river, alarm fizzling up his spine as he remembered that his mom was sitting right next to him. He felt really stupid for it, but he had almost forgotten that she was even there, the only thing of importance being Ivan in the story. Gregory stopped breathing, he stopped moving, he stopped blinking. Everything was still except for Ivan, who said, "Yes, we know. We'll find a way to fix this. We just need to know what was going on." Gregory's heart dug into his ribs like a jackhammer, not wanting to look up and see the face that his mother was giving him, unable to move a muscle. "Is that all you have to say?" Ivan asked one last time. Gregory nodded, the creak of his neck bones abrasive against the back of his skull. The temperature of his skin rose higher and higher as Ivan and his mother got up, shaking hands, leaving the room. When his mother's fingers touched his back, Gregory tensed and stifled a whimper, the pricks of her nails needling between his shoulder blades like tweezers. But other people were watching. She couldn't act yet. They left the station far too quickly, his mother's hand nudging him forwards as they stalked their way to the car, still not saying a word to him. Not yet. Not until they're alone. When the car door was opened for him, Gregory was overcome with the spazzing impulse to turn and run the other way. But who would he run to? The police? If the police saw him being bad and running from his mother, he was scared that they would put him in jail forever. Even worse, what if Ivan threw out the recording and ignored what he had said, just to get back at him for being bad? Gregory reluctantly climbed into the back seat, the door slamming shut behind him, locking him inside as his mother took her position behind the wheel. Woo! Okay, so if you enjoyed this video and you want to help support me in making more of these sort of things, make sure to remember to, before you leave, to like and comment about your favorite part. It really, really helps me in the long run, and I really, really, really appreciate it. So, anyway, sorry for being gone for like 2 extra weeks. I started going to a different college, so I had to get used to the schedule of keeping up with the new classwork and the new teachers and getting them to accommodations for migraines and all of that stuff. I had to prioritize schoolwork over working on this, but I'm back now, so I'm gonna be, you know, continuing the schedule like normal, hopefully. I'm kind of settling down into this new schedule. Okay, second news. I got demonetized. It said that I just woke up one day and it said that my channel was not eligible for monetization anymore. And they YouTube said that it was something about like reused content. And I'm so confused about that because literally everything that appears on the screen is mine. But I guess they just don't believe me. Maybe it was the intro. I'm gonna delete the intro with the actual gameplay footage, but the thing is, you're allowed to do gameplay stuff because otherwise Markiplier would be in trouble, so I'm not sure if it's that. I have no idea what the actual problem is because they weren't very specific. But anyway, they said that I was using reused content. I don't know how, but I tried to appeal, but apparently I didn't do the appeal right, because I thought at first that they just wanted me to clarify that, yeah, I do all my stuff on my own, but apparently what they wanted was they wanted me to actually, like, record me making a video or something like that. So anyway, because I made a mistake like that, I've been sent to demonetization jail for 90 days. I've been sentenced to demonetization for 90 days. My man's in jail behind bars. And I have to wait until like November something to reapply for monetization, so that sucks. I guess they just thought that I didn't make this on my own and they thought I was stealing it from someone. I don't understand what I did wrong. They weren't very specific. And I did the appeal wrong, so now I'm in jail now. So anyway... Anyway, I've talked enough about that. That's the second thing I need to tell you guys about. Third thing is, of course, the new episode is going to come out 2 weeks from now. Just, you know, like normal. And I think that's about it. This outro is way too long. Bye, everyone. I really, really appreciate your support. Thank you for commenting and liking and all of that stuff. It really helps me keep going while going through this difficult time. Hopefully, once November rolls around, I'll get monetized again and convince them that I'm not stealing my own content. I've been doing this all on my own and they don't believe me. Anyway, bye, guys. I love you. See you next time. Woo.